Radzavani for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. I'm delighted to have with me this Sunday early afternoon, Mr. Dave Coldwell. Dave, firstly, how are we doing?
I'm very good, thanks. Really good. Yeah, Sunday afternoon, day off, and then we're back in the gym tomorrow.
How's the family and everybody?
Yeah, really good, really good. My little boy's excited because he's back training with his teammates tomorrow. Grassroots football's back tomorrow. He's got his first game on Saturday. So yeah, he's got a bit of normality back. My daughter's able to go back to the studio as well for music. So kids are happy, so mum and dad are happy.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Hopefully that could just continue as we prolong and as we move forward into the rest of the year. Dave, want to jump straight into it. Yesterday saw Dillian Whyte return and avenge his loss to Povetkin. I know you know Dillian very well. Obviously, you worked the last fight, but you also know him very well before the last fight. How did you assess his performance?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was really good. The intent was there. I think the sharpness was there. It was so much better, I thought. Just down to his jab, rather than it being a pawing, laboured sort of jab. Everything was snappy, sharp, kept the range. Povetkin couldn't get in at all. His feet were better, where whenever Povetkin had wanted to close the range, Dillian's feet had taken that step back, glide off. He just kept the distance all the time, so Povetkin couldn't set himself, couldn't find those shots. And when he did try and throw the left hooks over the overhand rights, he was constantly out of range, and he was out of range at the point where Dillian could fire back with his hard counters. So I was impressed with him. I'm really pleased for him because, you know, there was a lot of pressure on it for him going into that fight. And you know, and for Xavier Miller, his coach as well. And I just think, you know, all respect in the world from, you know, they did the job. It was great to see.
It seemed like Dillian was really pumped as the ring entrance started. He was jumping as before he got into the ring, but then when he got into round one, it looked like they both wanted to let their hands go. It was incredible.
Yeah, he wanted to let his hands go, but I thought that there was smarts behind it. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. When you're a fighter like Dillian, a natural instinct of going in there and letting power shots go and smashing people up. As long as there's the thought behind it as well, then, you know, that's fine, and that's what he did. He was thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't. Yes, it looked reckless sometimes when he'd swing him in, but that's Dillian Whyte. But it was a little bit more compact, and he would take his head out, and you know, he was aware of what was coming back. I was impressed with him. I thought it was really, really, really good last night.
What adjustments did you make to make it more difficult for Povetkin to land? Obviously, we know Povetkin's signature.
I think it was sharper. I think his mentality was sharper. His feet were sharper. Yeah, Dillian's always going to fall off balance when he really, really, really loads up and he lets those big winging shots go. But in between those spots, I just felt as though everything was sharp. The balance was better. I remember in the first fight, he was a little bit. Whenever Povetkin threw or the exchange, Dillian had rock off balance as he's pulling out. It was like a bit slower, a bit slow motion sort of thing. At this time, he was sharper. It was much sharper. And yeah, there's not a lot to say. He was very clinical. It was very good, and his lead hand was the jab. The sharpness of the jab was so much better. And that allowed him to find the right hands, allowed him to find everything else. And I thought he did a great job. But you know, Povetkin's a tough man. And while ever Povetkin's in there, we know he was always going to be dangerous. But you always felt in that fight last night that Dillian had it under control. You know, he was aware of what was the dangers that were coming back.
He obviously made some changes in his team. He brought in Harold Knight, who obviously formerly worked with Lennox Lewis for a number of years, and changed nutrition, strength and conditioning as well. But in reality, Dave, how much pressure would there have been on Dillian's shoulders? I saw a clip yesterday where he met Povetkin and he said something in the lines of, it was hard to sleep after that fight. But how much of that was kind of in his head over the last couple of months? And then obviously to avenge it and just remove that kind of evil from his head and move forward now?
Listen, I mean, nobody knows what's in anybody's head, but obviously, you know, as a fighter, you would imagine that was weighing quite heavily, you know. But that was the fire that kept him burning to go through what he has to go through in camp. You know, all fighters need a fire that's going to motivate them, that's going to drive them to push themselves that little bit extra, even when they feel as though they're doing well. They want to push themselves even more. Everybody needs a fire. I'm sure that played a part of it. I saw again when he went into change rooms afterwards that he mentioned that he'd had the birth of his son, I think, 4 months ago. He's not seen his kid for 4 months. Do you understand what kind of resolve and mentality that takes? That's unbelievable, that is, and that shows you how much he wanted to give to this fight, to the preparation of this fight, how committed he was. And you know, we always talk about sacrificing Christmas, sacrificing, you know, time with family and things like that. But he's not seeing his kids. He's not seeing his baby. That's a huge sacrifice. So that tells you what mindset he had going into this fight. So he left nothing to chance. He gave it absolutely everything. And so when you give everything to your preparation, even though you feel confident because you've given everything, there is also an added pressure to you, because pressure, adrenaline, nerves, whatever you want to call it, because you know what you sacrificed for it, and you just it has to go your way because you've given absolutely everything for it. So yeah, I thought he handled it really, really well. And you know, and also after he's won, that huge weight that comes off your shoulder, that's massive, you've got that win back. The first thought he had was to walk across the ring, to go back to his corner, to get his stool, to walk across to give it to Povetkin. You know, that shows you the clarity that was in his mind for that performance, how concentrated he was for that performance. Even though obviously boxing is emotional, coming off for such a big loss, there's emotions in there. He was very clinical in his thought process, because even after it had won, it was like, okay, cool, go, and then we can celebrate after. And I thought that, you know, that was class as well.
David, word on Povetkin, it seemed like he took some big right hands in the first couple of rounds. Probably bigger power punches than what actually knocked him down in the first fight, and he took on Povetkin and carried on fighting until the very end.
Yeah, listen, massive heart, a tough man. You know, we saw how tough he was in the first fight. We've seen how tough he was, you know, in previous fights. You know, when he's been hit with bombs and carried on going. But in these last two fights, he took a lot of punishment, and you know, I don't have any, you know, it's nothing to do with me to speak about it, but looking at him, you would say now is the time to walk away from the sport. You know what I mean? He's it'd be a good time for him. He goes out on his shield, so to speak, giving it absolutely everything. And you know, I thought, yeah, he just give it everything, and you can't ask anything else of a fighter, really, to be honest.
How much has Dylan got left to improve? He's not getting young. He's 34 years of age, and he didn't have a long amateur career. 30 odd fights, 31 odd fights. Now, how much improvement has he got? Because he doesn't really have a long time left now.
You say he hasn't got a long time left, but you know, it's a difficult question, because especially in heavyweight boxing, they can go on for quite a while. But obviously, there's miles on the clock. There's wear and tear. The wear and tear of camps, of sparring, the breakdowns of your body and things like that. It all depends on that. You know, with Bellew, for the last 4 fights that he had, his body started breaking down. You know, and that's why we knew that you know, win or lose with Usyk, he had to walk away after that, because you come to a point where the years and years of training is damaging your body. You know, physically, there's things you maybe can't do as well as what you used to be able to do, and then how does that affect your performance going forward? So you see a lot of fighters modify the style as they get older. But as far as you can, whatever you're willing to learn, it doesn't matter age-wise. You can always learn to improve. But what you can't cheat or get away from is the aging process. Maybe just slowing down the reactions, the reflexes, the ability to take a punch, things like that. The speed, things like that can take a toll. But Dylan's he's not had a, like you say, he's not had a long amateur career. He hasn't got that sort of wear and tear. His wear and tear and everything is what he's done in the pros. And yes, he's had, he has had some hard fights, but you look at him last night, he looked fresh, he looked sharp. I wouldn't look at him and think, oh, he's on the slide. Not far from it, to be honest.
Dave, Dylan doesn't back away from big fights. He's now fought Povetkin back-to-back, Oscar Rivas, Joseph Parker, Derek Chisora twice. I know he wants that world title shot, which looks quite difficult to happen anytime this year because obviously Joshua is kind of tied up at the moment. But kind of where does he go? Because he can't drop down. He's not the kind of fighter that gets himself up for those kind of low level fights. He wants still big names, and he's out there for him to go after now. Maybe a Deontay Wilder they talked about yesterday.
You know what? I feel sorry for him because you would say, especially with the length of time he had to wait last time to get his world title shot, and then obviously the Povetkin fight happened. The first Povetkin fight happened. Now he's back to where he was. The problem is because we've got this AJ Fury, 2-fight deal, I think, or something like that. He's not going to get a shot at any of these two. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Because I feel as though I might be wrong, but I feel that those two will fight each other, and once their little duels resolves, whether it's 2 fights or 3 fights, if it goes 1-1, I don't know, but once they've fought each other, I think they'll retire. I think they'll do, because that's the absolute pinnacle. So I don't think Dillian's ever going to get a shot at either of those two. So the thing is maybe perhaps after the first, if the fight happens, and after the first AJ and Fury fight, which is for all the belts, I believe the belts will get fragmented, because for the second fight they won't be able to keep them all together. So when they get fragmented, that's when obviously the governing bodies are going to pair the next 2 for each of those belts, or whatever the belt, whichever belts become available. That's where I think Dillian gets his opportunity. So it's a case of marking time, and like you say, it's a fine line, because Dillian will want the real fights, and the fans will want to see him in real fights. But when you look at the past, whenever you're rolling that dice, whenever you're going in against a real fighter, a dangerous fighter, you're rolling that dice, you might lose, and then you're back to square one. So I don't know. As a fan, I'd love him to fight Deontay Wilder. I think that's a great fight. As a fan, I think Andy Ruiz is a great fight. But as a fan of Dillian, and who's somebody who wants to see Dillian to get his world title shot, I would like to see him in less risky fights. I think he deserves less risky fight. When we see so many fighters, so many champions taking easy defenses, making it, I know he was his mandatory, but a Canelo against a Yildirim, in between the Kovalevs, the Callum Smiths and Billy Joe, I wouldn't have a problem with Dillian having an easier sort of fight, just to mark time, and because he's done that, where he's took the tough fights when he doesn't need to, when he's sitting pretty at the top of the rankings. And you roll the dice, sooner or later your number comes up, and you get beat. So I won't want to see that happen to him again, to be honest.
Okay, all right, Dave. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of time this Sunday. There's a lot of boxing happening in April, so I'm sure we're gonna catch up sometime in April. Obviously, we've got Chisora Parker beginning of May. We've got Andrade Williams. We've got Herring Frampton next week as well. So a lot of boxing taking place in April. So I'm sure we'll
looking forward to it. It's good times. Last night was a great night. So it's good for boxing fans, and I've just got to say, it was brilliant to see fans in an arena. And do you know what? There was only 502 people in there, but it sounded so much more. It was brilliant. It was really good. So fingers crossed we can get that over in the UK and start having fans and great atmospheres for these big nights.
No, absolutely. Dave Coldwell, IFL TV, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.